doing off over there? Huh? You come on home here. You better come on home. Yeah, that's a good girl. That's a good girl. Come home. You got a few questions you want to ask first, or you want me to start out with that? That's a good start, and we can go along and I may go off on various tangents, but yeah, I was born in 1922. I was born at home. My mother delivered me at the old ranch house, and we lived quite a ways out from town. We were in ranch and farm and ranch country out quite a ways from the town of Goldthwaite in central west Texas. Lifestyle on the farm in those days, and it was, and of course the mode of transportation we had was actually horse and buggy. We didn't have electricity. We had coal oil lamps drawing kerosene. We didn't have running water, and we'd go down the river and bathe in the river water. Me and my brother, we'd go in, go take a bath, go to the river. My mother would make us go to the river and take a bath before we'd go to bed. Otherwise, we'd get dirty feet and all in the bed sheets. My sister and my mother, we had a number 3 wash tub, which you wash clothes in. That's what we'd carry in the house and fire water in the house to bathe. You know what I'm talking about when I say we bathed in a number 3 bathtub? This is a number 3 wash tub. This is used by country people to wash clothes in. And when I was a kid, growing up in extremely cold weather, let water bucket down in the well with a rope and pull it up, carry it in the house, pour it in the bathtub. And we'd heat some water in a tea kettle on the stove and pour it in there. Then to get your bath, you had to get in that bathtub to bathe. And can't you just think of a grown man trying to sit down in that bathtub and bathe? By the time I was 10, Dad said, "Okay, Lacy, you're big enough and old enough now. You can have to start working with your older brother and myself in the fields and on the ranch and doing things." So from about 10 years on, I tried to pull my weight as a worker. By 1930, things were hard. The stock market crashed, and people were so upset they lost all their money. They thought they were well off, and bingo, all of a sudden they were broke. And many of them committed suicide, and we would get news in the newspaper, people jumping out of high buildings and killing themselves and so forth. Things were bad. You didn't have money. We had no money coming in. We lived for, even to the point of shoes. They didn't buy shoes for the kids. We all went barefooted, come on up, and even go to school until the weather began to get cold. And by then, they'd somehow or other afford to get shoes or clothing that we needed to protect from the cold. Things were really bad. The people, and a lot of people in town that they had, I don't know hardly how some of them lived. They got enough food even to eat. Franklin Roosevelt was elected president in 1930, the election in 32. And he instituted various programs to help solve the problem of the Depression. A lot of controversy about Roosevelt's program, but it seemed to work. And things began to pick up in the late 30s. When I graduated from high school in 1940. But by then the war clouds were bristling over in Europe, and already military training was picking up. Some of my class joined the Army. I didn't. I went to Texas Tech College in Lubbock. My mother's cousin had married a man that owned a drugstore in Lubbock, Texas. And to facilitate guys going to college, he'd begun to hire only college kids to work in the drugstore. So I went to Lubbock, got a job there working in the soda fountain, making sodas, Coca-Colas, and back then we made our own Cokes. They're referred to us as soda jerks. And all I was made 25 cents an hour. But I worked enough to pay my tuition. Tuition was like $3 per semester hour or something like that. College tuition was altogether different from the way it is now. But I supported myself. What little bit of college I got, my mother and daddy didn't cost them a dime. By the end of the semester of 41, the war clouds were building up more, and the military was hiring civilian workers. I got information about civil service examination. You take a civil service exam, and the Army would hire you as mechanics. So I did. I filled out the application, and I went to work as a civilian, hired in as to be a mechanic. I was finally drafted in 1944 and went into the military. After training, of course, I shipped overseas to the European theater. Went across France, went into Belgium to Luxembourg, and there on into Germany. I had retrieved these here a while back that I was talking about. These are pictures that some GI took. They were given to me, and I had them in my possession when I was evacuated back to the States. But between Luxembourg and Germany was this big billboard. I don't know who dreamed up this bullshit about no fraternization with any German, because that was an asinine thing to try to enforce, number one. And I don't know why they wanted to enforce it. Whether they didn't want us GIs getting with them German girls or what. This is me, and he's another GI, but he's a Russian. Her name is Romanishin. And this is my friend Romanishin and a Niehiser. He was German. It was a German, a Russian, and me worked together. We're all three mechanics. We were all Americans. But a person with German blood, one with Russian blood, and then me. As far as our combat, of course, I was a mechanic, and we had some incoming artillery fire and so forth and so on, but I didn't encounter any man-to-man fighting where I was nose to nose and toes to toes with the enemy. Thank goodness for that. What enemy I may have killed, I didn't get to see them blow up. We were firing big shells into them. Like I say, we fired big shells. This was an old church in Trier, Germany. The German girl nurse that I had when I was in the German civilian hospital gave me this picture because where this church once stood and looked like that is nothing but rubble when we got through down bombing it. And here's where this is a Belgian soldier guarding the rubble. That's where that beautiful church used to stand. The guys that were aware and saw what happened to me, they think it was an artillery shell probably that exploded underneath my Jeep. I didn't know what happened or anything. The explosion was, I don't even remember the sound of the explosion. I have no recollection of what happened. They blew the Jeep up and blew me out apparently, and they couldn't find just where I was injured. They treated me for a couple of 3 days, and the doctor told me, you'll get over it. You're sore, be bruised up, but I didn't. And in the meantime, we had moved up, and that's when they put me in this German hospital. And there's where in the x-rays and the examination disclosed fractured vertebrae. Had number 4 and 5 lumbar were fractured, and the intervertebral disc between those two vertebrae was completely shattered. I was in the hospital when they decided that I was of no further use over there. So I was actually flown back. I was evacuated from Germany. So actually coming home from the war for me was just an evacuation back, and no fanfare, no parades, or no nothing. And here's what I was fighting for, the reason I went to Germany. That's Marceline, that's my wife, and that's James Lacy. Back in the era I was talking about when I left college, took a civil service exam and went to work for the old Army Air Corps. Actually, I was working as an instructor, teaching a little class on aircraft engine mechanics. And a cute little old blonde came in my classroom every night to pick up the time and attendance report. I noticed one of the young boys in the back of my class kind of flirting with this girl, or her flirting with him. I think it was more so. So I asked him one day, I said, Bill, his name was Bill Manuel. I said, Bill, who's that cute little old blonde you flirting with? And she comes in here every night. This girl's name was Rosaline Goodrich. He says, would you like to meet her? I said, she's pretty cute. I'll fix you up. I'll get you a date with her. That led to another date, and then pretty soon that led to marriage. And the way that came about, Bill and Arthurine were in the front seat one night. We were on a date. They leaned over the back seat and said, hey guys, we're going to get married. Why don't you all get married too? And let's make it a double wedding. And I looked at Rosaline and she looked at me and we said, I don't care. As soon as it was not, Bill and Peggy backed out on us. Meantime, Rosaline and I had already decided, okay, it looks like it's going to be a go. Actually, we'd only known one another just about 6 weeks before we married. We were married for 65 years. 65 years, 7 months, and 21 days. Each morning, and this went on for a good number of years. I don't know when I started or why or wherefore. I'd get up ahead of the others and put the coffee on. And by the time the coffee was made, I'd take a cup to Rosaline, and she'd sit up in bed and drink her first cup of coffee. Then she and I would eat breakfast together. She and I would go out and we'd go to dinner on Friday night sometime. But our typical life then was work, school, and back home again, and not a whole lot of entertainment. Why did we get married? We weren't really in love. My love for her developed after we had married. And then when you realized, she's a real nice girl. I really got a prize here. We meshed together. We thought a lot together. We were just a team. Here's another picture that's interesting thing to you. That's Garrett Lim Hunter, my grandson. And that's my wife, Rosaline, that's his grandmother. Garrett Lim had gotten married, and they had the wedding and the wedding dance, and I danced with the bride. She wanted to dance with the groom. I said, baby, you can't even stand up. You can't walk. You can't dance. Garrett Lim said, I'll hold her. He picked her up and he carried her out on the dance floor. And they danced because she wanted to dance with the groom. And I couldn't dance with her. I couldn't hold her up. I wasn't strong enough. But Garrett Lim did. And I appreciate it. I love him for it. She loved that boy, and that boy loved her. But if she wanted to dance with the groom, he saw to it that she did. People had what they call a murmur of the heart, in mitral valve prolapse. And her heart surgeon said her heart muscle was strong, and he could replace both the mitral valve and the aortic valve, except for the fact that she was bad to bleed. They couldn't control her bleeding. I think he told me, he says, if I leave her alone, she'll live another 3 or 4 months, or if I try to operate, she'll die. And she lived 3 more years after that. How come such a quick courtship, or actually practically no courtship at all, really? Just meet and get married, and then it lasts 65 years. It just so happened we were a match. She was a fine woman, a wonderful woman. Probably a better woman than I was a man. But anyhow, that's the reason it lasted 65 years. She was a good woman, a good mother. and a great loss. And here's my pussycat, and here's my current companion. You can get down, Nyla. I don't think we want a picture of you. You smile for the camera, so he'll have a picture of you. You're my only companion now. I don't have a puppy dog anymore. Oh, that's a bad cat. Now my lifestyle, now that the wife has passed away, and of course I have since retired, so I don't get up and go to work anymore. But I still, my work schedule and my timing is pretty much in harmony with the way it was then. I get up now in the mornings, make my coffee, and of course I don't have her to take my coffee to in the morning, but I go and I pour my first cup of coffee and I go back and sit in bed and drink my first cup of coffee. That's my time for, as I say, I go down memory lane lots of times. Sit there in the dark, sip my coffee, and let my mind wander back to yesteryear. And some mornings I have very pleasant memories. I recall things. Yeah, I keep the Bible on my table here. I did have another one I kept over there. I noticed it's back in there on that dresser. Make sure there's no dust on it. There's an old gospel song about dust on the Bible, dust on God's holy word. It's a beautiful song. It's a gospel song. I love gospel music. I read lots of times. I'll sit here and read on a book or on my nook naturally until my eyes begin to get tired reading. Then I go in there and turn on the computer and get music till bedtime. And shut her down and go to bed. Incidentally, these rooms where we are now, everything you see, I built. I drove every nail that nailed these walls. I put the ceiling up. I wired for the electricity. I did the plumbing for the gas that's in here for gas heater. But all this inside work, I put all the inside walls in. I hung the closet doors. Did all the electrical wiring. I wired everything.
Where I've been. The years will pass on by me like a race car flying by. The clouds will move, the sun will lose to the moon and the tides. And I'll keep holding my Bible till my fingers bleed inside. The years will pass on by me without even trying.